Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be teaching you all the tips, tricks, and techniques to make the perfect French macaron. My name is Caitlin, and I first want to shout out today's audio sponsor, Joda. Joda is an uncle who has supported me since the beginning of my creative endeavors, and today we get extra crispy audio because of Joda. Now on to the video. Now before we get into the teaching component of today's video, first I want to talk about how and why macarons. My journey with macarons has been long and tumultuous. I started in 7th grade, and it all started on one fateful day in 2017 when I came upon Sweet Cookie Pie's Blueberry Lemon French Macaron video. To this day, I still think that this combination of flavors with the lemon and blueberry curd, as well as the purple shells, is the best macaron flavor I've ever had and baked. Today's macaron flavor in this video is indeed inspired by Sweet Cookie Pie herself. Here's a photo of the lemon blueberry macarons that I attempted to make when I first watched her video. However, I was inexperienced and I didn't have a great oven, and so the 3 pictured are the only ones that made it out alive. Everything else kind of bubbled and crumbled and did not make it out successfully. And then my macaron journey continues. I went through more trials and errors. I even tried the Italian meringue method, but that failed miserably. They just didn't harden and become the correct texture, and I still to this day have never tried them again. The only photo you'll see is them unbaked because it did not go out well. Then one day I came upon Hanse's video, and I loved Hanse's channel because she made amazing ASMR baking videos, and I think this is when ASMR was really starting to pop off as well. But I tried Hanse's milk macaron recipe with this ratio of ingredients, and to this day I still use this recipe, but still I never fully perfected them, and it would still be very unreliable when I would make macarons. Sometimes they would go really well and sometimes they would fail. Once I came to college, I kind of took a break from making macarons. I took a chill pill finally. Then recently, just this past month, I rekindled my love for baking macarons. I had a birthday party with my family. I tried making them again. I realized, whoa, I just made the perfect macaron. It is indeed 7 years of experience that it finally culminated to me making this hit macaron that my entire family loved. Now here I am, 7 years later, at a point where I am finally ready to make a video to teach you everything that you need to know and actually do in order to make the perfect French macaron that provides consistent results. Which leads us into our next segment, 7 things I learned from 7 years of torment. Feel free to skip this segment and read this list on your own time. However, I'll summarize my manifesto for those who are interested. Number 1. You need an oven that circulates heat equally and closes properly. This is so every single shell gets an even amount of heat in order to bake and rise properly, or else you will get inconsistent results among your pan of shells. In my experience, when I had an oven that did not circulate equally nor close properly, I would get shells that would crack and some that wouldn't rise, and this is because the temperature needs to be even. So I know you're probably thinking, well, Caitlin, I can't really just up and buy a new oven if my oven isn't circulating heat properly. I just want to caution everyone that if you kind of had a janky oven like I did in the past, then you will have inconsistent results, and there will most likely be some shells that will often crack or get more burnt than others. Number 2, turn on the AC or fans in your house to create a cool, drier environment. When mixing the macaron batter, you really don't want it to get too hot, or else your batter will become more runny and melt easier. There's a process where you have to dry your shells, in which you let them sit for 30 to 45 minutes and form a casing, so when the shells bake, they have a smooth surface and they don't crack. Number 3, use a kitchen scale to measure the ingredients in grams. This ensures accuracy and precision in your batter. Number 4, make your filling first. Give your buttercream or your curd time to harden and cool in the fridge. Then once your shells are ready, you're ready to fill your macarons. Number 5, in the wise words of Taylor Swift's song Mastermind, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Set everything up mise en place. All the bowls that you need, the spatula, the piping bag, the weight, they're all ready for you to use so that everything else, the actual process, can go smoothly. Number 6, you should actually use room temperature eggs. Take those eggs out early, let them sit and become room temp when you make your batter, because in my experience, if I've used cold eggs, the meringue in the batter will be too stiff and cold. Therefore, when you bake the shells, they most likely will crack in the process. And lastly, take your time. I know, it's hard to stay calm when things get chaotic, especially with baking something so delicate. However, I found that becoming a maniac doesn't really ever help anything, and I just cause more errors. Try your best to just prep as well as you can, enjoy the process, and just know that you'll become more experienced over time. Alright, are you ready to get baking? Let's go. I started by making my lemon blueberry curd, and this recipe is by Nerds with Knives, so I'll link their recipe down below. It is the most delicious lemon blueberry curd ever, so I definitely recommend you try out this flavor. Now, using a medium small bowl, we're going to make our almond flour and powdered sugar mixture. You need your scale and a sieve to measure out these 2 ingredients. Once you've measured out both your almond flour and your powdered sugar, give that a really good whisk to the point of where it gets a nice fine sand texture, and this will prevent any lumps in your batter. Now that we've finished the dry ingredients portion of this recipe, we'll now move on to the wet ingredients. So first, pull out a small bowl and measure out cane sugar using the scale. Once you finish measuring out the cane sugar, get out a large bowl and a hand mixer or a stand mixer if you have one, and pour in your room temperature egg whites. Get out your hand mixer and start by beating your egg whites on low. Now, my main tip with beating your egg whites is to not rush the process. I used to think that if I went to high speed immediately, this would speed up my process. However, this will cause your egg whites to become too stiff too fast. So it's safer to go slow and keep checking the consistency of your egg whites. When you see your egg whites start to get a foamy texture, start pouring in your cane sugar slowly so that you don't deflate the egg whites. After you've poured in all of your cane sugar, increase your hand mixer speed to medium. For me, this is around 6 or 7 on my hand mixer. Stay at this speed until you begin to see glossy, loose ribbons in your meringue. When your egg whites are glossy and runny, add in gel food coloring. Make sure you use a gel-based food coloring, because if it's water-based or too liquidy, this will ruin the texture of your meringue. Now I want to show you how often I'm checking the stiffness of my meringue peaks to ensure that I don't under or over whip my meringue. When the peak cannot hold itself, that's how you know it's still too under whipped. However, you don't want the peak to be too stiff. Aim for a peak that holds delicately. Holding your meringue over your head is also a fun way of checking that they are indeed whipped. It's time to gradually pour the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. I always pour my almond flour and powdered sugar mixture in 3 components. And mixing together your dry ingredients with your egg whites is one of the most crucial steps of baking macaron shells, because this is what's going to determine the consistency of your batter. So I kept in footage of my macaronage process with very few cuts to show you exactly how you need to execute this mixing process successfully and achieve a good batter consistency. Grab your spatula and fold in the dry ingredients. Now this means to cut under and scoop over your batter with your spatula. Once you scoop in your last portion of almond flour and powdered sugar mixture, this is when your batter is going to be driest. And a funny way that I check my batter's consistency is to see if it's getting sweaty. And what I mean by sweaty is your batter starts to look glossy and you can see a sheen that's forming. The goal is to achieve a lava-like texture where when you pull your spoon up and let the batter drizzle, it can form a perfect figure eight in a smooth manner. I can also tell that my batter is undermixed if the swirls aren't melting into itself. And by that I mean, you can see these little ridges where they still have shape, which means that the meringue is still too stiff and it's not worked into the batter enough. On the other hand, you know that you've overmixed your batter if when you form your figure eight, it falls way too fast and your batter just looks like a melted goo. My batter is now falling very smoothly, and as you can see, it's not underdone nor is it overly runny, so it's ready to go. Can you see the batter looking nice and sweaty now? Now on to piping. I have my piping bag prepped and ready to go. I have a reusable piping bag that I use with a metal tip. You can also use a plastic bag or a plastic piping bag, anything that works for you. And all you need to do is slowly spoon in your batter. I found that that's the best method because the accuracy of pouring is just too unreliable. To prepare your baking pan, make sure that you cut a piece of parchment paper that's flat to the surface. And this is so your macarons maintain a round shape when you pipe it onto the pan. Now I'll be teaching you the technique to pipe your macarons. Place your non-dominant hand at the top of your piping bag where you've twisted it shut, and place your dominant hand below your non-dominant hand, and think of this as the controller. Use your dominant hand to increase and decrease pressure on the bag. Keep your non-dominant hand where it is at the top. Squeeze the batter out using your dominant hand and perform a flick of the wrist with your dominant hand to cap off the macaron. This is so that the shell has a smooth surface rather than a peak. Also keep your piping bag vertical to the pan. This will allow you to get that perfect round shape. Squeezing your macarons out to the same size takes practice, so just try your best to pipe out identical circles. With this recipe, I piped out 30 shells. Immediately after you finish piping your macarons, tap the pan on a cloth surface to release any air bubbles in your shells. This helps ensure that your macarons won't have cracks when they bake in the oven. Let your shells sit for 30 to 45 minutes in a cool environment. I usually turn on my AC to ensure that it's a nice cool temperature that'll dry out my shells. The goal is for your shells to form a nice matte casing where when you touch the surface, it does not stick to your finger. Preheat your oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit and let it sit at that temperature for 10 minutes, then place your macarons in the middle shelf, one pan at a time. Immediately after you place your macarons in the oven, lower the temperature to 285 degrees. These macarons turned out awesome. You can see the feet, which are the little bubbles at the bottom of the shells. They rose to a nice height and the surface of the shells are smooth. Time to pipe. I got a medium plastic piping bag and cut out a small tip. First, match up your macaron shells to check which are most identical to each other, and those will make the two sides of your macaron cookie. There are many different ways you can pipe. I don't think there's any one that's more correct. It's more just what you find gives you the most control. Alright, let's do a little taste test. How beautiful it looks. This is just a half, I know. Not too sweet on the crust. Perfect amount of chew. And it has a lot of airiness that you want in a macaron. And then the lemon blueberry curd really cuts the sweetness and the sugariness of the meringue. Whew! These never fail to impress. Alright everyone, thanks for allowing me to teach you how to bake the perfect French macaron. I hope you learned something useful from this video and are inspired to bake macarons for yourself. Now I made these lemon blueberry macarons for a tea party that I was throwing, so here's a quick montage as to how they look paired with a nice tea party. The theme was lavender and Bridgerton, if you couldn't tell.